preteen sea monster Luca Paguro spends his days controlling a school of fish off the coast of Porto Rosso, Italy. His parents, Daniela and Lorenzo, forbid him from coming to the surface out of fear. But Luca eventually becomes tired doing the same thing every day. One day, while Luca struggles with the decision of whether to surface or not, he encounters Alberto Scorfano, a fellow young sea monster. Alberto has frequented the land and maintains a covert base on an island close to Porto Rosso, where he says he resides with his father. He asks Luca to go with him. Luca reluctantly follows, and together they travel to Alberto's hiding place on dry land after changing into humans. They quickly decide to build their own scooter from scratch after Luca discovers a poster of an Italian scooter called a Vespa in the hiding place. Only his grandma is aware and is keeping it a secret, so Luca must continue to hide his new double life from his parents. Soon after learning what Luca has been up to, Lorenzo and Daniela decide that the best way to keep him safe is to send him deeper into the ocean to live with Lorenzo's brother Hugo. Disgusted, Luca flees with Alberto to the city of Porto Rosso. They discover there about Ercole Visconti, a neighborhood bully and multiple Porto Rosso Cup race champion. Ercole is going to reveal Luca's identity as a sea monster by submerging his head in a fountain. But a young girl named Giulia Marcovaldo intervenes to save him. Giulia invites Luca and Alberto to visit her home, where she spends the summers living with her one-handed father, Massimo, a skilled fish hunter who is on prowl for a sea monster. Daniela and Lorenzo decide to ascend to the surface in an effort to find Luca because they are unable to find him anyplace else. They start dousing the boys there with water in an effort to discover Luca. In an effort to win money to purchase a Vespa, Luca, Alberto, and Giulia decide to sign up for the Porto Rosso Cup triathlon together. 3 races make up the triathlon: eating spaghetti, riding a bike across town, and swimming laps. Giulia decides to learn to swim, Alberto decides to start eating pasta, and Luca decides to start riding a bike after learning how. Ercole gradually develops a mistrust of the boys, while Luca and Giulia grow affectionate toward one another. Luca becomes intrigued when Giulia mentions attending school in a different region of Italy, where she spends the rest of the year. Alberto develops resentment toward Giulia and Luca as their friendship deepens. Alberto tells Giulia he is a sea monster following a disagreement. Alberto retreats to his hiding place, feeling betrayed since Luca refuses to act fearful of Alberto instead. Giulia splashes water on Luca back at her house, turning him into a sea monster. Giulia sends him on his way because she fears that Luca might be harmed if his true identity is revealed. Luca discovers Alberto moping in his hiding place. Alberto answers Luca's inquiry regarding tally markings on the wall by saying that he made the marks by keeping track of the number of days since his father abandoned him there. Despite Alberto's continued hostility toward Luca and his desire to withdraw from the triathlon, Luca chooses to compete with Giulia. Luca and Giulia show up on the day of the triathlon without Alberto. They move on to the cycling stage after successfully completing the first 2 challenges. Luca stops his bike under an awning as it starts to rain in an attempt to prevent turning back into a sea monster. With an umbrella in hand, Alberto arrives on the scene to assist Luca. But after being wet, he turns back into a sea monster. Urkel traps him with a net he has thrown. Luca dashes into the downpour to save his pal, risking having his secret discovered. He liberates Alberto while simultaneously changing. While Julia tries to stop Urkel from harming them, she ultimately suffers an injury herself. Back in town, she is carried by Luca and Alberto. Urkel tries to kill Luca with a spear when they arrive, but Luca puts the bully in his place. Everyone in Portorosso realizes that the sea monsters are actually not all that evil, especially Massimo, who expresses his gratitude to the boys for saving his daughter. At Giulia's home, Luca's parents celebrate their reunion with him. Alberto later admits that he sold the Vespa they acquired with the winnings in order to pay for Luca's train ticket to attend school with Giulia. At the railway station, Luca and Giulia are waved off by members of Luca's family, Massimo and Alberto, who has chosen to remain in Portorosso. As the train pulls away into the pouring rain, Luca waves goodbye to them and transforms back into a sea monster.